Hello everyone, how are you going? Welcome to why there's a CIA base in the center of Australia. Something that seems completely ridiculous and a little bit unnecessary, but I guess let's find out.
Australia is a fascinating continent. As the driest continent in the world apart from Antarctica, it's no surprise that Australia is home to the second largest desert of the inhabited Earth's continents, remaining only behind the Sahara of northern Africa in scale and scope. The Great Australian Desert spans more than a third of the continent and is larger in size than the entirety of Kazakhstan. And it's partially because of this desert that Australia itself, despite being the sixth largest country in the world in terms of land, is only the 53rd largest in terms of people, with a modest population of less than 26 million citizens. We're around the same size as North Korea. But within this vast, inhospitable, and empty desert, at the precise geographic center of the Australian continent, exists a surprising and relatively unknown secret of enormous geopolitical importance. One of the largest overseas military bases of the United States of America, operated by the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Administration, and the National Reconnaissance Office with a full 800 combined personnel.
Well, geez, that is certainly no small base whatsoever, to be having and housing 800 people from the USA over here. I'm surprised I've never heard about it because I can only imagine that takes a little bit of resources and facilities, and it's not going to be just a tiny little shed in the middle of nowhere. I mean, actually, to be fair, Pine Gap could not be more so in the middle of nowhere. Just look at that, directly in the center of absolutely nothing but red sandy desert. For goodness sake, as we can see here, it isn't even just one sandy desert. You've got the Great Sandy Desert, the Gibson Desert, the Great Victoria Desert, the list goes on. Even the Little Sandy Desert is probably bigger than half of Europe. And so it certainly does leave me with a lot of questions surrounding the entire thing. When was it set up firstly, but also why? Why in the direct center? That seems like such a hassle.
The base is located nearby to the small Australian town of Alice Springs. Population just 26,000 or so people. But besides for that, there is no larger town that exists anywhere nearby to this base, within a zone of about 700,000 square kilometers, roughly equivalent in area to the US state of Texas. So to say that this American intelligence base, with hundreds of American intelligence officers operating within the dead center of Australia, is a remote location would be an incredible understatement. From the small Australian town of Alice Springs, if you take a short drive just 10 minutes or so to the southwest, you'll quickly run into various threatening signs like this one warning you to turn your car around and proceed no further, or else face some vague consequences. Just beyond these signs is, of course, the top-secret joint intelligence base of Pine Gap, run by both the American and Australian governments. And unless you've watched the Netflix series about this base going under the same name, you've probably never even heard of this place, or knew that such an important American operation existed in the middle of the Australian outback.
Well, he absolutely hit the nail on the head there, because I have not watched the Netflix documentary or whatever you want to call it, and I definitely also had no idea that this was even a thing. And like I said, it is no small base, and yes, that it's 800 personnel, but even just all the other infrastructure around it. I mean, it doesn't look like there's any kind of airport facilities, which is interesting to me, so I guess they're landing at Alice Springs and then driving over. But looking at the size of those trees over on the right, that is a fairly serious warehouse, as well as what I can only assume is large, long-range wireless facilities in terms of those big domes. What else would they be? Like, they tower above everything else. I mean, I also find it a bit ridiculous that they have that much grass growing in the middle of the Australian desert. That is probably all the grass in the entire middle of Australia right there, and that would take so much water to be able to upkeep. But I guess I can understand why, if you want to have people to have recreational areas, grass definitely makes sense, and it's fair enough. It just looks so out of place. Look at the surroundings. Now, I'm just even wondering if I can find this myself. Alice Springs, there we go. It is, okay, he said, what was it, southwest? So we got the airport. Actually, it was along a very straight road, but it looks like, is this it? Yeah, wow, it looks so out of place just because, well, look how cleared it looks in the middle of kind of mountains and stuff, but also just this random patch of grass and the shape of it all. My goodness, how far out is it? It is only what is it going to be? If 20 kilometers, 18 kilometers, that is basically the same distance as the airport. And so, like I said, it makes sense they want to be near it because they don't seem to have their own. But man, it looks so out of place just the way it's been carved out of the rest of the land.
And going under the more official codename of Project Rainfall, it has a very long and mysterious history here, going back decades into the past. You see, as the global Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union intensified during the 1960s, both nations began sending up satellites into space. With the launching of the earliest intelligence-gathering satellites, there was a recognition that real-time command and control over these platforms were necessary. and data collection to monitor geopolitical adversaries from afar was required. An American base to operate these American intelligence and spy satellites operating over the planet's eastern hemisphere could have theoretically been constructed anywhere, but the precise geographic center of the Australian continent was chosen for a number of strategically important factors.
I'm sure it was, but no, that is insane that the Cold War is the reason behind all of this. I mean, to be fair, I'm fairly sure that I've also heard before that Australia played a fairly decent and key role in getting people to the moon, because when the Earth rotated away from the moon, or when the USA rotated away from the moon, they lost communications with Apollo 11, and so Australia just then was able to fill in the gap, literally, of the Earth rotating around. And so I wonder if the same facilities were used to accomplish the same things, because it's all communication, just communication with what? Be it intelligence satellites or just moon missions.
But the precise geographic center of the Australian continent was chosen for a number of strategically important factors.
Sure it was.
First, the sheer isolation of such a base deep within the continental interior of Australia, more than 900 kilometers away from the nearest coastline, ensured that any potential spy ships from foreign nations passing around would be incapable of intercepting any of the signals coming down to the base from the satellites. Second, the base would be located deep within Australia, a country who is very friendly and allied towards the United States, and far away from any major Australian population centers around the coasts. And third, and perhaps most importantly, the location where the station would be built required the base of the floor and surrounding hills to not exceed 6 degrees, at the precise coordinates of Pine Gap's location in the center of Australia, at latitude 23.8 degrees south and longitude 133.74 degrees east. The ability would be gained to allow for high connectivity with satellites stationed as far as 60 degrees east and as far east as 153 degrees west, effectively covering the entirety of China, North Korea, the Indian subcontinent, and a significant portion of the then Soviet Union.
Damn, that is a serious amount of land, like they said, just to not have to exceed 6 degrees, was it? I mean, I know that Australia is a fairly flat country. I think it's actually one of the flattest in the world, but my goodness, to be searching the entire Eastern Hemisphere, going, well, actually, first you'd be going, who are our allies, like they said, then out of our allies, who fits this criteria, but then you still have to search all of Australia, basically, to be able to find the perfect location, I'm sure. And so I'm just trying to think, why would you possibly want those mountains surrounding you? Because he very clearly said that they wanted maximum horizontal visibility, and so to be putting that in their way doesn't really make sense. I mean, maybe they put stuff on top of them for even greater visibility. Maybe actually, especially given the curve of those mountains, it would almost provide the perfect shield of both an incoming and outgoing kind of radio frequency attacks or something like that. I mean, I know that it already covered the fact that it is 900 kilometers from the nearest coastline, so you're not really worried about it in that regard, but I also thought that the atmosphere and also the light pollution and all the other pollution is also going to be the thinnest, and that's what I thought it was in terms of being able to see up into the stars better, but no, it is just because it is so isolated from everything imaginable.
In short, it was a very logically chosen location to construct a satellite intelligence base at. And as a result, by late 1966, the American and Australian government signed a treaty calling for the creation of a US satellite surveillance base in Australia, which eventually became the modern Pine Gap, where operations began in 1970 with the relocation of hundreds of American families to the center of the outback. But there was another, larger intelligence alliance at work here that led to the creation of the base as well. Known as the Five Eyes, this is an intelligence alliance of the 5 major English-speaking democracies around the world of the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Created during the fires of the Second World War and expanded during the Cold War, this alliance structure enables all member states' intelligence agencies to easily cooperate with each other and share all of their worldwide data.
Oh man, that is some serious amount of data that can get moved around there. I mean, I do know that the USA kind of has a controlling share of the entire market of their intelligence agencies. They kind of go, give us this thing, or you're going to experience some bad times. To the point where there is allegedly just all these reports of even just police stations being rung up by the CIA going, give us this information, and then they just ask for some back and they go, no, that's not how it works around here. You only give us one-way street stuff. To be fair though, the Five Eyes absolutely make a lot of sense. I mean, obviously they are all children of the United Kingdom, but for goodness sake, they are very, very similar countries, and so especially given the time period being World War II and then continuing and expanding into the Cold War, absolutely you are going to want to be getting your hands onto as much information as possible that needs to come from all corners of the globe, and that's basically the only way you can do it. So even though when you originally read the headline there was a secret CSI base in the middle of Australia, you go, hang on a second, stop poking and prodding and spying and doing all those things, just go back to your own country, get out of here, we don't want you here. You go, hang on a second, actually it benefits a lot of people, and physics permitting there is only so much they can do from their own corner of the globe, and so that's where allies on the world stage make a huge difference.
As the Cold War continued to rage and new threats to the United States emerged, like the People's Republic of China, Vietnam, and later on, Iraq and Afghanistan, Pine Gap continued to play a pivotal role in providing intelligence while dramatically growing in size to the point where, today, it boasts nearly 40 separate antennas across the site and has operated at least 9 geosynchronous satellites owned by various US spy agencies over the past 45 years.
Is that a map of all the satellites? If that is a map of all the satellites, that is insane. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I can only imagine that ring is the geostationary satellites, and then everything else is just floating around. You've got polar satellites, you've got everything. It's insane. Look at that blue bubble. Oh my goodness, how do you even get up into space without hitting something? Honestly, it looks like something out of WALL-E. I mean, it's very, very impressive, and maybe they're planes, but I can only imagine that they're definitely satellites looking at the kind of altitude that they are on. That is, wow. That is insanity, especially because this video came out, okay, only 3 months ago, so it's not too long ago, so maybe they're including Skylink and things like that. No, what is it? Elon Musk one. Starlink, yes, of course, how did I even forget? I mean, to be fair, Starlink definitely has nothing on all of those antennas, and my goodness, that is a lot. I did not expect them to have that many. I can obviously see a bundle, but not 49. I mean, I guess it makes sense because you were going for full bandwidth, full spectrum analyzing, but my goodness, 49 separate antennas that are the size of buildings.
Now, what makes these kinds of satellites uniquely well suited to the mission of intelligence gathering is that within a geosynchronous orbit, they travel in the same direction as the Earth's rotation, and therefore retain the exact same orbital period as that of the Earth's rotation, which effectively just means that they view the exact same portion of the Earth's surface at all times, as if they're sort of fixed in position on the map. This is in stark contrast to satellites that operate in lower Earth orbits, which circle around the planet often multiple times a day, and move at a relative pace much faster. One of the unique advantages of a geosynchronous orbit for a spy satellite is that within this range, it can see an enormous amount of the Earth's surface all at once. In fact, if you were to go and do all the math and run the calculations for this, it turns out to be just a tad bit less than half of the Earth's entire surface.
Jeez. Are there, wow, the altitudes are that high that it can see the entire thing? I mean, obviously they can angle it to be able to see the entire thing, and generally they don't see half the Earth. I mean, I know that there is virtually just unlimited variability of the altitude of orbit. I mean, for goodness sake, it is space, you can just kind of keep going if you needed to, but I did not know that geostationary satellites just could see half of the planet. I thought they were closer than that.
This, of course, makes it incredibly easy for the spy satellite above to gather a vast amount of information from a very large area beneath it. And so today, there are 3 of these types of geosynchronous spy satellites known to be operated from Pine Gap, all at the same line of latitude. Orion 5 above the western Indian Ocean, Orion 7 at the western tip of the Indonesian island of Sumatra, and Orion 3 just west of the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. Each of these 3 geosynchronous satellites sit at an altitude of about 36,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface at these precise coordinates, and they each collect an incredibly wide range of electronic signals from the Earth's surface beneath them, like radio communications, radar emissions, microwave transmissions, missile telemetry, satellite and cell phone transmissions, and even more. These 3 satellites effectively grant American intelligence agencies, and therefore the intelligence of all the Five Eyes member states, an incredible degree of satellite coverage across every single area of modern US critical strategic concern.
I was going to say, that is an absolutely outrageous placement. I mean, obviously it is for a very particular reason as well, but Jesus, they couldn't have just got everything else if they tried. And you can only imagine, especially with the 49 antennas down in Pine Gap, that there must be more of them. I mean, for goodness sake, these are the publicly known ones. What about all those top secret ones that are just hovering in a particular location, just watching one particular place in China, Russia, or anywhere else that the US might need? Regardless, what these 3 satellites are able to accomplish is nothing short of impressive, especially given the density of human population in those areas.
From Western Africa, across the Middle East, Ukraine, Russia, Iran, Afghanistan, China, and North Korea. More than half of the Earth's surface outside of the polar regions. Once data from these regions is received by the satellites, their information is relayed via a signal back to the Pine Gap base in the center of Australia, and then disseminated from there towards the various intelligence agencies of the Five Eyes member states, like the American CIA and British MI6. And while controversial at times, the American intelligence capabilities that are granted by satellite sites around the world like Pine Gap are unmatched by any other intelligence agency in the world. And while most of what these satellites do is top secret and highly classified, We all know that launching those satellites, maintaining them up there, and gathering all that data from the surface below is an incredibly difficult feat to accomplish.
There is certainly no denying that, and my goodness, does it take a serious monetary investment in the first place just to be able to get them all up there. I mean, the upkeep of them realistically is zero because, well, you can't access them, and so whatever happens, happens. In saying that, though, I certainly would not want to be the one that has to tell my superiors or whoever that the entire thing just doesn't work anymore because, well, that's a lot of money down the drain. And so, look, I don't believe that this kind of thing comes as a surprise to anyone. You know, everyone knows that there is GPS satellites and all these other satellites just up there, but there is also a boatload more satellites that are doing a whole range of things, be it military or just medical or all these random things that you'd never even know about. And that is completely fine because there is no real reason to be keeping track of every single last satellite. I mean, for goodness sake, as we saw, there is a lot, and so you would definitely have to be a little bit paranoid about satellites to be keeping track of every single one. But look, in saying that, they definitely do serve a very serious purpose, and even though, like you said, the entire system being the Five Eyes in the USA system kind of outmatches every single other country in the world, you know that Russia and China and everyone else in between also has the same systems going on for themselves, and so it's not a matter of, oh, big bad USA and big bad Five Eyes, they're just spying on everyone. No, everyone is spying on everyone, and so it really just comes down to having the biggest, baddest system, and so you just don't get left out of the loop until it is too late. But anyway, in saying that, I reckon I'm going to finally call it there, so thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to do the YouTube algorithmic things down below. Also, if this is the first video of mine that you are watching, then make sure to go check out any other ones I've done. Also, make sure to go check out the original video down in the description below, or hey, maybe you even just want to consider subscribing so that you don't miss another one of these in the future. But all in all, have a good one and see ya.